A lifelong member of ethical culture, Randy Best was born in St. Louis and grew up attending the St. Louis Ethical Society, where his parents were lifelong members. Since 2016, Randy has served as the leader of the Northern Virginia Ethical Society. Randy is also current president of the National Leaders Council and chair of the Leadership Training Committee. Previously, he was leader of the Ethical Humanist Society of the Triangle and the Ethical Humanist Society Without Walls. Randy lives in Bethesda, Maryland, and has 4 grown children, and as we heard, 2 grandsons. So, Randy.
Thank you, Anne. It's my pleasure to be here today and to address the Brooklyn Ethical Society. We are in a dark period in this country. The president and his administration show no respect for the rule of law. Aided by a Congress that has abandoned its responsibilities and a largely compliant judiciary, federal programs are being eviscerated, immigrants are deported without hearings, trans people are being persecuted, international law is being ignored, and now we are engaged in an inhumane and pointless war. How did we get here? This is a simple question with a multifaceted and complex answer. I can only address part of how we got here in today's talk. I will also make suggestions about what we can do about it. I saw a great bit on YouTube, and it's a thought experiment that I'll share with you now. It was titled, "Imagine if America was a dictatorship." We would let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. We could help our rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. We could ignore the needs of the poor for health care and education. Your media would appear free, but would be secretly controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests. I know that this is hard to imagine, but please try. The point of this thought experiment is obvious. Most of the elements of a dictatorship are present to one degree or another in America today. Before diving any deeper, I want to share some definitions. We hear terms batted about naming different types of governments. Think about where we are today as you hear these labels. Democracy, a system of government by the whole population, typically through elected representatives. Dictatorship, or authoritarian, a form of government where a single leader or small group holds absolute power, unchecked by laws, constitutions, or the will of the people, often maintained through force, suppression of dissent, control of the media, and limited civil liberties. Both of these systems of government may maintain a facade of democracy. Autocracy, a form of government in which absolute power is held by one person, known as an autocrat. Oligarchy, a small group of people having control of the country. Plutocracy, governing by the wealthy. And one that I like in particular is kakistocracy, government by the worst, least qualified, or most unscrupulous people. And then there's kleptocracy, rule by thieves, a system where leaders thrive on extreme corruption, use state power for private profit, creating wealth for themselves at the expense of public services and economic growth. How can America be defined today? Are we a functioning democracy? Does today's America exhibit many of these corrupt forms of government simultaneously? I live in an America where Nazi influencers and misogynist pundits are running amok on social media, attracting an appalling number of followers. I live in an America where there are no consequences for corruption, and our president pardons corrupt politicians and those who commit crimes in his name, along with those who contribute to his personal wealth. I live in America where the White House, aided by a supine Republican-dominated Congress, is systematically dismantling the government and destroying democratic institutions. It's easy to think that if we could just get rid of this president, we will be back on the right track. This solution is tempting to embrace. However, this solution misses the larger, darker picture. Trump and his minions are a clown show that serves to distract us as long as it continues to meet the goals of the power behind the scenes. That goal is disempowering voters so that corporate interests and billionaires can be free of a democracy, free from voters that may pass laws and regulations restricting the economic liberty of those moneyed interests. We are at the culmination of a historical trend that started with Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan. A far-right, radically conservative, libertarian ideology that government should be limited to the military and the police. No government funding for education, scientific or medical research, Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. No government role in civil rights protections. No government regulation of the environment, public health, or corporate profit. The goal is to reduce the authority and reach of the government and diminish the power and standing of those calling on the government to protect their rights or to provide for their health, welfare, and financial security. Legislation to suppress voter participation furthers this goal, and we have one now awaiting approval in Congress. I read a few books charting the rise of this ideology to its present position of power and influence. It was a profoundly disturbing education for me, and my top pick on this subject is Democracy in Chains: The Deep History of the Radical Right's Stealth Plan for America by Nancy MacLean. Big money, dark money hidden under many layers behind the scenes is pushing far-right radical libertarian ideas. A few of the most prominent players are Peter Thiel, who accumulated vast wealth from founding PayPal and the Clarion Capital hedge fund, whose company Palantir is on the cutting edge of data analytics and military software. Thiel sponsored J.D. Vance's rise to power. Larry Ellison, the billionaire founder of Oracle Corporation, who recently acquired TikTok. Charles Koch, who is owner of Koch Industries, which makes him one of the world's richest persons. He has invested heavily in developing radical libertarian anti-democratic strategies, and his financial contributions have essentially bought academic departments at George Mason University, right down the road from my Ethical Society in Northern Virginia. There are also think tanks and policy institutions that push this radical right agenda. The Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, remember Project 2025? Citizens for a Sound Economy, Americans for Prosperity, FreedomWorks, the Club for Growth, the State Policy Network, the Competitive Enterprise Institute, the Tax Foundation, the Reason Foundation, the Leadership Institute, the American Legislative Council. How many think tanks can you name on the left? These individuals and organizations are out to reshape American government and American society. The idea animating this restructuring is a concept of economic liberty. Economic liberty is where individuals and businesses are free to make economic decisions without coercion or government interference. Economic liberty sees the government imposing taxes on businesses or wealthy individuals to fund social programs as an affront to their economic liberty. Democracy is dangerous because voters may elect representatives who will enact social programs which will be funded by taxes on businesses and the wealthy. This skewed view of the world divides people into two groups, makers and takers. Makers, those who create wealth, should be entitled to the unrestricted fruits of their empires. Takers, the common folk, are seen as parasites living off the government, using programs that unjustly take from the makers. Democracy is in the way of the economic liberty of the makers, and therefore it must be controlled. The challenge of economic liberty is that the changes that it proposes are not popular. The challenge is how to make changes without political popularity. Misrepresenting your intentions is one strategy. It continues to serve them well, but allies are needed. Enter the current unholy alliance between white Christian nationalism and the radical right. Extremist white Christian nationalists are out to remake America as a country that privileges a particular Christian ideology and their narrow view of gender, science, race, and individual rights. While these ideas are not part of the radical right's libertarian ideology, Christian nationalist societal ideas are outside of the far right's economic concerns. This alliance allows both parties to pursue their agendas without interfering with each other. Conflict may come in the future, but for now, they serve each other's interests. These two ideological streams have converged in today's Republican Party. Nancy McLean wrote, "The Republican Party is now controlled by a group of true believers for whom compromise is a dirty word. Their cause, they say, is liberty. But by that they mean the insulation of private property rights from the reach of government and the takeover of what was long public, schools, prisons, western lands, and much more, by corporations, a system that would radically reduce the freedom of the many. In a nutshell, they aim to hollow out democratic resistance, and by its own lights, the cause is nearing success." These changes are being made in America today, and they lack the support of a large majority of the American people. Right now, we essentially have minority rule, where Congress and the President's executive orders are making changes that are not popular with the majority of Americans. Radical right Republican control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency enable these changes to continue without effective political opposition, insulated from the desires of the majority of Americans. We cannot rely on the judiciary to save us. The Federalist Society has been stacking the judiciary through a Republican-controlled Senate for some time now. The Supreme Court has revealed itself to be partisan enablers of the actions of the current administration. Gerrymandering at the behest of the president is another step toward preserving control of Congress and minority rule. Disproportionately empowering the minority is baked into our Constitution. A Constitution that skews power to the minority through a Senate that disproportionately empowers less populous states. A Constitution that decides the presidential election through the Electoral College, again empowering less populous states. What makes our Constitution exceptional is not its lofty ideals. It is a number of constraints on majority rule. Does it take the concept of tyranny of the majority a little too far? We need to stop revering the Founding Fathers and a Constitution that was designed to protect the property rights of the slave-holding minority. Louis Brandeis wrote, "We must make our choice. We may have democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both." I have thrown a lot of ideas out there about how far gone our democracy is and some of the forces behind it. I object to the power currently wielded by the unholy alliance between the radical right libertarians and the white Christian nationalists on many grounds. Foremost among them, though, is that both ideologies are more abhorrent in that they do not see everyone as equal. Both ideologies divide people into the deserving and the undeserving. There are not deserving and undeserving people. There are just people, all of whom should have equal rights. So-called makers believe they deserve to wallow in their wealth and see the less fortunate, that is, almost everyone else, as undeserving of any assistance. White Christian nationalists see those who are not white Christians and nationalists, and those who do not support their narrow views as deserving to be excluded and punished. Both ideologies willingly use others as a means to achieve their ends. Super-rich libertarians ignore the contributions of workers and society that created their wealth. White Christian nationalists aligning with a corrupt, debauched president to achieve their goals. Voices calling out the immorality of the current administration's policies and actions are drowning in the chaos and noise. Nancy MacLean wrote, "Our trouble in grasping what is happening is that the way we have been trained to see the political divide. We have been told to see political division as conservative versus liberal, pro-market versus pro-government, Republican versus Democrat. It's hard to let go of this conceptual framework, to let go of the idea that well-meaning people on both sides can, through give and take, work for the public good." There are anti-democratic forces out there, and they are on the rise. We are living in a historical crisis. We need to do everything that we can do to stop it. Is it enough? Is it already too late? People are waking up. There is an emerging sense of shared purpose. We are in a dangerous in-between moment. People are calling for action, assuming someone will appear to lead, but there's no leadership, no structure, and no coordination. I must do all that I can to resist our slide into authoritarian America. What can I do? What does resistance look like in this present moment? Tad Stormer, a resistance historian, says resistance has 3 phases. The first phase is protest. Real resistance starts with protest, with dissent and disagreement, shared ideas about what is wrong. The No Kings protests are an example and a beginning. The next phase is opposition. This is the organizing phase, creating parallel institutions to challenge power and replace those that have been compromised. This challenges the legitimacy of power in coordinated ways. This is the next phase, opposition, and we're not there yet. And finally, the last phase is active resistance. Sustained strategic and tactical pressure that forces power to respond or recalibrate. And they will respond if pressure is applied. We are barely into the first protest phase. We must move from resistance as a moral choice to resistance as a moral and practical imperative. This is a long process. Those in power will not relinquish it willingly. I must not hesitate to take small acts of resistance that come my way. I must begin thinking how I can create acts of resistance. I will commit to participating even though I fear that it is too late to stop the slide toward American authoritarianism. This means that what we will need to overcome to restore democracy and human rights is far greater than we thought. It's much easier to destroy than it is to reestablish. I fear that we are too far gone and the road back will not be easy. Yet I believe that we can save our country. And I'm going to close with a quote from someone who worked toward saving his country, who was concerned with human rights and human dignity. And that person was Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln wrote, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. Thank you.